These reaction videos have been really, really comforting to me because they really give us a departure point to really talk about topics that I think are relevant or important to the convosphere, the comment sphere in social media. And this first clip we're going to talk about, it's not really a clip, it's a statement that was made. And it's a statement made by a digital creator named Zia Marie Nugan. I saw it on Facebook. I'm going to pull it up as I'm talking. It was posted by a friend of mine. And this friend of mine, known her from college days, from Brooklyn, just always posts these poignant posts from digital creators. And this one really struck me because it's so apropos to our conversations about dating, life, and love, relationships. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Here we go. This is what they put. I find it so weird and predatory that people who only want casual sex want to do it with people who only want serious relationships and catch feelings easily. Like there are more people looking for casual sex than there are people looking for casual relationships. There's no reason for this. There's no reason for this. Just letting that marinate, just let that silence just fill the room with all its glory. You want to jump in first?
Sure. Yeah. One of the biggest takeaways I have first, like primarily from this, was clarity is kindness. And essentially what that means when I first heard it, or when it was mentioned to me, is like, you know, people who keep you confused and not sharing their intentions, like when y'all first start talking, or even as they're updated in their own individual life, I feel like they're playing you. And it costs people nothing to communicate, hey, I'm only looking for this. Hey, I'm only looking for that. And I think people always want to feel like they're making informed decisions. So I think, you know, to keep somebody on a string and keep stringing them along and telling them like, hey, I'm only here for this, but it's really that. I'm gonna say, I gotta say though, this kind of struck me on a personal note because I've been accused of this before. And I really kind of feel like there are people in this world who don't know how to control their feelings. There are people in this world who they think because they want a relationship, that means they want something more substantial and are therefore better than you or superior morally to you. And it's like people who manipulate for relationships or people who are infatuated with love and relationships can be just as predatory as people who are just looking for casual sex. And I think while the post may have had some zing to it, I think that there is also personal accountability in this. And I think, if your antennas are up, nobody has the room to play you. And if you're listening to, because I mean, I really feel like everybody has a conscience and everybody has a gut. And if you're listening to your gut more often than not, I hear from women, I saw the red flags when they, in the beginning, or I saw the red flags early. So it's like, if you really were looking at the red flags, listening to your gut, paying attention to your discernment, I don't know how you end up in a situation where somebody's spinning the yarn on you and dragging you along for the ride. Um, so while I do feel like on one side, like for the people who are being predatory in that way, they should be more clear about their intentions. Because I mean, I think to say that someone is who only wants casual sex is literally out there looking for people who are looking for relationships. How would we ever prove that? So like that's what I'm saying. I think it's two sides to this. There's the side of yeah, when you're dealing with people, be clear in your intentions and what you want to do, how you want to move with them. But also to the person who is saying or trying to call out the behavior of somebody who wants casual sex only targeting people who want relationships. I don't know. There has to be some personal accountability there.
You said a lot there, and I want to respond to it. But I want to first kind of think about how I was like processing this post. Stealing hearts will ultimately get you to a point where your heart is stolen. And this is just the spun of like the morality tale, whether you're reading Chaucer, Toni Morrison, or any of the great writers or bards of the last X amount of centuries. There's always a tale of someone who's stealing hearts who ultimately gets their heart broken to come back and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was moving in this dark energy. I didn't realize how much that I hurt you. And I thought the post underscored that. And it really underscored the fact that there are people, and I've been aware of them, who just see any body, like a body, as fuel for their engine of casual sex. They just process and move on. They are gobbling up territory. They are gobbling up bodies and lives as they see fit, and they just move on. And I have seen that because ultimately, for some people, the exercise of casual sex has nothing to do about sex, but about establishing power or regaining power that they might have lost in other areas of their life. And so maybe they were preyed on in different ways, different parts of their life. And now they're using casual sex or sex, if that's their weapon of choice, to now prey on others. And so if you're here and you're talking to me, I'm going to pursue and I will lie, beguile, and manipulate you or manipulate the situation or our dynamic, which is, I think, another a piece to it, not just the person, you're manipulating the dynamic to get what I want out of the situation. And, you know, anytime you go out of your way to hoodwink or control people, you are giving up your own agency and sense of freedom. We often don't talk about that. Almost in the way that people say, hey, when we talk about racism, the person who is receiving the acts of racism are being dehumanized, but so is the person who's pursuing the acts. Now, we obviously know for those who are receiving it, the victims, they are being dehumanized in a very public and openly way. They are usually the ones depicted or experiencing power being forced upon them. Those wielding the power, because they're wielding power, seem emboldened or to have some kind of advantage. But ultimately, you're being dehumanized as well. You're losing who you are, what we call the essence of humanity, which is ultimately connected to love. And I think that's where we have to think about it when we talk about casual sex, because it's become such a prominent part of our dating conversation over the last decade with the advent of swiping apps. And the more that we've grown in the proliferation of handheld devices and mobile devices with the apps that help us connect, casual sex is just a thing where some guys might have slept with 10 women before they got married or settled down or committed. Now guys are getting numbers to 40 and 50, not because they've gotten so much better in their game, but because the apps have facilitated connections where they can now play a larger numbers game and the spread is just that much bigger. But your point, though, about people who are in relationships are just can be just as manipulative or predatory, or at least perceived to be. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I want to respond to it, but I wanted to hear more about your point because you mentioned the word moral, that they think that they're more moral than you. What do you mean by that? Or can you expound on
Well,
that a little bit more?
I think sometimes people think that desiring of a relationship because it's usually associated with emotional engagement at higher levels. They think that what they want and what they desire is of higher moral value than someone who just wants casual sex. And so they think they get to call the person who just wants casual sex a predator or a collector or things like that. When it's like that person may have been honest about what they want, which was casual sex from the beginning. Because I mean, this again, this is something that I've experienced
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
tell somebody in the beginning, I'm not necessarily looking for a relationship, or I'm not looking for a relationship. They continue to engage, you sleep with them, and then all of a sudden it's like, you slept with me, so you should just know that I'm going to catch feelings and I want to be in a relationship. And because I do, what I want means more than what you want. When it's like, yo, you engaged in the same casual sex that I did. So,
Well,
so for you to tell me now that this desire that you have, which you didn't express in the beginning, but there's now this attachment because we've engaged intimately, and now you think because I want to continue to engage intimately that I'm the bad guy in the situation.
mm,
And I'm just like, you don't get to cast your aspersions on people. You don't get to judge somebody in the moral hierarchy because you think what you want is more substantial or more emotionally engaging than what they want.
mm.
I guess what I'm saying is there's no direct correlation between predators and people who want casual sex. I'm saying both people can be predatory in their own way. People who are infatuated with love and relationships and think because that's what they want, it's of a higher moral value. So I get to say anybody who doesn't want this is a predator.
Do you think it's because it becomes off as like a force thing with the people who want relationships, a subtle force?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there are people who emotionally try to muscle people into relationships.
Mm, mm.
Or even if it's not emotionally, they do it mentally. Like I said, they will make you feel or try to make you feel like just wanting casual sex or not wanting to be in a relationship like they see it, maybe committed, monogamous, that what you want is somehow bad and makes you bad. What they want is somehow good and makes them good.
Yeah, I'm gonna let this siren rock for a second.
Yeah, cops is out tonight. The boys 12 is out tonight.
Some of this I think ties into even superficial religious familiarity. Most cultures that have emerged with a religious slant, Muslim, the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and some of the others will extol the virtues of connected sex. And that ultimately sex is best enjoyed in the confines of some kind of covenant relationship agreement or committed scenario. And I think if the world's religions that have been built over centuries now are saying and repeating the same thing, and then you encounter somebody, and casual sex has been around, obviously, we have prostitution, and that's been going on as long as humankind has been around, sex work. But I think that butts up against what people find to be either anecdotally or through our stories shared by our ancestors and our forefathers, foremothers, and for communities still cement us and anchor us to this idea that when you're sharing your body in that way, there needs to be a connection of intimacy and commitment. And the people who don't do that typically are moving in a way that is they're trying to aggrandize, right? They're trying to increase their opportunities as much as possible, any way possible. And I have seen that. And we're all familiar with that narrative as well. What you're putting forth as far as people emotionally muscling people into relationships happens as well. I have, when you were thinking about it, there are people who are putting pressure on people for marriage, putting pressure on people for commitments. And sometimes maybe they don't even want the relationship, but because they are connected to a larger community that expects them to be in a relationship, not even just for sex, but just you're of that age. You're in this community. Where's your ring? Where's your babies? I mean, I've heard people from the South talk about this, that, you're 25 years old and kind of like, okay, what you coming over here for? If you ain't married with no kids, what's that all about? And for them, it's not about, oh, you're of a different sexual orientation or you're just a player. It literally sometimes is about just a frankly otherness, a weirdness that you exhibit by not subscribing to the rules that they play. But I do think this point that this digital creator did make is valid on some levels. The words of the use only obviously is going to evoke conversation and say, hey, wait a minute, only? You know, we talk about this when you go through therapy. When you say you always do this or you never
Okay.
do these
Yeah.
absolutes,
Hmm.
these words that indicate absolutes tend to create problems for us in the short term, in the long term, in our relationships, but also in persuading others to our point of view. You have to be careful of them, even though there's some times where they make sense rhetorically, if not, they make sense figuratively, like rhetorically and figuratively, and sometimes in very few cases, literally. But I do think casual sex culture does have a slipperiness to it that has to be managed and managed intentionally by the person who maybe is desirous of that, who is engaging in that culture. I just think it does. I think if you really want to be honoring someone's humanity, you have to be communicative and you have to be connecting. At the same time, I also think there's people who are on participating in that, who want feelings, who may engage in it and think that's going to be the hook or the anchor to keeping that person so they can grow into a relationship. And sometimes it does, but it's not a good process. Like I mentioned before, you could play the lotto and win. People do, and they win a lot of money. But I wouldn't talk about that as a tried and true process for getting rich in this country.
Right.
I would, prevail upon you to engage in other strategies that are tried and true for attaining wealth. Maybe a little bit longer, and maybe a little bit more unsexy, but they're better for you than relying on the lotto. And I think it's the same kind of scenario with this. If you think using your body in that capacity is going to anchor someone, because then you guys can connect and build a relationship, it has happened. It happens, and it happens frequently. But the probability of it happening for you, I wouldn't risk it. If you're the kind of person who catches feelings and wants to be in a relationship.
Yeah. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. Like, I don't know if the person who made the post has found himself in that situation where it's like they've had casual sex with somebody, or they've had sex outside of a relationship with somebody. They actually wanted the relationship and they either thought the sex was going to get it, or over time, if I continue engaging with the person this way, it'll just fall into a relationship.
Or got manipulated too.
But
I mean,
and I think that's the thing. We would never be able to know at what point the manipulation takes place, because if this person, because you got to think about it like this: the person who's doing the manipulating, if you're engaging with them with consent, they're not going to think you have a problem with casual sex. So then, at what point do they become the bad guy or the predator because they want to continue what y'all have already done?
because I think that's one scenario you're explaining, which does happen. I think another scenario is actually, I like you, I want to build with you, and people are saying, "Yeah, we're cool, we could definitely build, and let's talk about that." But that's happening over conversations where there's physical intimacy. Now you could push back on the person who's doing that and saying you need to demand more out of yourself by putting boundaries, for sure, absolutely. I'm just saying that other person who's bringing them along on that ride knows what they're doing, and at times is being coy or reticent about what their real aim or goal is. They're not just saying, hey, look, man, I just want to have sex. You seem good. This is a jump off. Let's keep it at that and let's move forward. There are people who have that relationship and that dynamic and they do it fine. There's others that struggle with it. And there's others that purposely, for whatever reason, they don't have the communication skills. They're not, they're uncomfortable with their body and the dynamics of sex. They are doing, following a dynamic of manipulation to secure and ensure that sex is going to be consistent with this person. I just think that's how it happens. People talk about meat markets and locking a roster down or a rotation.
Yeah.
These are all things about casual sex, and no one's really talking about how that's impacting the other person, or really what could this be doing to the people that I'm doing this to. And I'm not going to have a whole bunch of conversations. And when someone catches feelings, they're going to say, "Well, you knew the game," or they'll push it back on that person, which that person should be guarding themselves and setting their boundaries, but you shouldn't be moving the way you're moving either. And that goes back into the morality where, you know what, this is why casual sex is a slippery slope. And it's more slippery slope-ish than talking about sex in the context of a committed, connected relationship, or in sometimes what they used to call covenant relationships, in in antiquity. It just is.
Yeah, no, I mean, from that point of view, I definitely get it. Like I said, the reason why I was reacting to it this way is because it struck me personally, because that's something I heard before too.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the advice I gave the old girl. Like I was like, you pretty much told me about your track record of sleeping with guys that you're not in a relationship with.
You got to move a little bit over into the camera. Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, I was saying that, you know, my advice to her was like, yo, you already told me your track record of sleeping with men without a commitment, or being in a relationship. So for you to tell me that because I don't want to be in a relationship with you, but I'm open to having sex that you yourself said that you wanted to have, and we've had, how all of a sudden now, because you're saying you want something different, I'm the bad guy in the relationship. I'm the predator or the collector because I,
The collector, the
that's
harbinger,
yo that's literally that's what she called me. She said you're a
the
collector.
collector. That shit has like a short story,
Yeah, we know
literary.
that's definitely an
The
offensive
collector. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely
character.
an essay reading at a academic circle somewhere in the Northeast.
Yeah, Tivoli, Tennyson Tivoli, that's his name, the collector.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was just like, how do you get to point that finger at me and say I'm a collector, or I'm these things because I'm being consistent with what I said from the beginning? I didn't even mind the fact that you changed. It was like, but you changed and didn't say anything to me, and then you came back and was like, yo, I feel like you're just trying to do X, Y, and Z because you don't want to be with me. When I'm just like, but this is something that you knew from the beginning. You knew what it was when you signed up. And like, I'm not saying that to say, ha ha, game, like
Yeah, yeah,
shame
I
on
got
you.
you.
I'm not doing it to one up you, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm being consistent with what I've communicated, what I was clear about, how all of a sudden do I become the predator, the collector, the bad person, the immoral person, because now all of a sudden you say you want a committed relationship, or you want to have sex now in the confines of a committed relationship?
Well, I think this is classic. I can't stay in this space and then judge myself. So now I have to lash out and come at you. The old phrase, hurt people, hurt people. And obviously that's a major issue. But it underscores my point of how you don't have these types of issues around sex in committed relationships. You have different types of issues around sex. People weaponizing sex when they're committed relationship, people turning the faucet on and off, people feeling unstimulated, robbing, committed relationships rob the transgression that typically is associated with sex. So then you're trying to establish that transgressive element because that has just been a part of your sex life since you started having sex, usually for most of us when we're younger, and then it doesn't carry over well into marriage or committed relationships. So it becomes stale and boring and dull. Absolutely, there's other types of issues with sex when you're in a committed relationship that the relationship, if it's strong, if it's two people willing to communicate and build with each other, they can overcome. I just think there's a slippery slope with casual sex that isn't really talked about. I.e., I'll give you another example. I think it's related, but people who have casual sex aren't really communicating about their needs physically, what needs to happen in the bedroom. So a lot of people are racking up bodies, so to speak, increasing numbers. And I remember reading one of my favorite writers, Nancy Jo Sales, when she first originally wrote about Tinder in 2016, 2017. One guy was like, yo, I slept with 40 women last year. My text game is strong, and I'm not really talking to them. They already know what it is. They already know what it is because I'm telling them what it is from the gate. And the ways in which, well, that's working for you. Is it really working for these women? And are they getting great ecstatic sex? I think casual sex leads to or increases the probability you're going to have bad sex. Obviously, we've heard people have one night stands and have great sex and then you just don't see that person anymore. But it tends to lead to that because the communication and the connection and the safety Psychological safety, especially, is not there. And that just becomes an indictment, I think, of our modern culture that a lot of people don't want to do, because I think a lot of people are enjoying the casual sex, especially as it's become scarier and scarier for most people to be in a relationship.
You know,
It's become a bigger deal.
this is the first time that I ever really thought about or acknowledged how people's definition of casual sex is. Because for me, I always thought casual sex was like a one night stand, not necessarily sex outside of a relationship. Because there have been plenty of people who I haven't been with and have had incredible connected sex with. I always thought it was just like the one and dones, the hit it quit, the smash
Yeah.
and dash.
Met you at the hotel in Mexico. We talked, we chopped it up a couple of nights. We're both leaving in 2 days. We beat a couple times. Yo, nice to see you. Follow each other on Facebook and Instagram. And that's it.
May not talk to you again, but it was
Yeah, but I
cool.
mean, we're friendly, right? Friendly on the Instagram. Yo, I remember you worked a couple years ago. PR, can you help my friend? Yeah, and you do the little slide to help the friend out, but I'm not building with you,
Right. Yeah.
and you ain't building with me.
Yeah. No, I always thought that was the difference. I didn't realize that some people really think that if you're not in a relationship, period, even if you've known this person for months, years, y'all may have
Oh,
been
yeah, it could be
friends
for
a
some
couple of,
people.
you know what I mean? I didn't realize that until just now.
It could be. I always thought casual sex is, look, you're cool, I'm cool. We've been out on a couple of dates. We're now having sex. Nothing's committed, but we know each other and we're safe with each other. And now, and also, that I'm moving a certain way with other people, and and I know you're moving a certain way with other people, but this is just, we're in each other's rotation because we feel safe with each other and comfortable with each other. Uh, you know, but it also could be one night stands and just kind of, moving forward. So I think there's a lot, again, it's slippery.
Slippery. Yeah.
Casual sex is slippery.
Yeah.
And the moment that we decide and start to talk about casual sex in an open and honest way, as I mentioned before, it becomes an indictment of modern culture. And then now you're accused of being preachy or religious. And you're old school. And that's stuff that went out in the 50s and the 40s or the 30s. And for some people, they're young enough, they'll even say the 80s. And you're missing the point of what it means to be free sexually and morally in this modern society. I'm free, you're not, because you're tethered to these concepts of, waiting before, till you get married, or covenant relationships, committed relationships, being connected, long-term partners, life partners, etc. You're the one that's outdated. You're the Xerox machine showing up when I easily have a scanner on my phone.
Hmm.
And I think that's where, when you can't have these kind of real conversations and say, yeah, but I've noticed when you speak, one day it's X, one day it's Y, the other day it's Z, the other day you're doing the whole alphabet, and you appear to be confused, angry, frustrated, downtrodden, sullen. Maybe this lifestyle just isn't for you. Some people can't be professional wrestlers during the 80s because they were on the road for 300 days a year and they miss their families. That's fine. Some people can do that lifestyle, or they made it work for them,
Mm-hmm.
and they compensated with however they needed to compensate to get to the next show, to get back on the road and maintain that lifestyle. You have to realize who you are. And that goes back to the point you're making about putting up boundaries and borders. If you are meeting people who are communicating to you clearly that they want casual sex, or they just want to have this level of interaction with you, and you can say, well, that's not for me.
Yeah. Something different from what you want. If they
Absolutely.
commit, like you said, clearly, I'm glad you emphasized that word. If they say that clearly,
Yeah. Now, we know from back in the day, I know I've heard stories, dudes, as you like to say, will spin the yarn on you. They'll spin the yarn on you.
take your brain.
Oh, yeah. And just say, oh, absolutely, I like you. I'm really hoping to build with you, and let's take this to another level. Women have done it too. Like you, I'll build with you. And that guy's thinking monogamy. She's thinking, well, yo, I have an opportunity to meet this person from school, that person from school. I don't think so. And instead of just breaking your little heart,
Mm.
I'll sell you the message that you really want sold to you. And
Whatever it takes, right?
whatever it takes. And that's the predatory nature of casual sex.
Got you. So yes, now I understand more of what she was saying.
Hmm.
Um, in that regard, I feel like if there are people out there who are doing that,
Yeah, totally wrong.
man, you can't do people wrong like that, bro. And just not expect anything to come back, aka showing titty goals. You can't continue to do people wrong and not think it's gonna come back to you.
Absolutely. 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 Yo, we're at time. Um, so let's wrap this up. Thank you guys for listening. We have some good more reaction videos we're going to hit you with, and we got some new things in the work that we're going to be hitting you guys with pretty soon. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening.
Peace.